Hello everyone, welcome to Election Future. Decision Desk HQ and The Hill have just released new polling averages for a host of key battlegrounds. Today, we're going to update this 2024 electoral map with the latest numbers. Currently, there are 12 states on this map without a rating, plus the competitive 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska. All other states are categorized based on a very high likelihood of voting in a particular way, or they haven't had a polling average released yet. Let's dive in by poll closing time. Starting at 7 p.m., the polls will close in Virginia and Georgia, as well as most of Florida. However, since some counties in the Panhandle remain open until 8 p.m., we'll hold off on Florida until then. The Commonwealth of Virginia has trended hard to the left over the last decade or so. Kamala Harris leads Trump by 5.8%, based on a total of 12 polls. She is averaging 51.4% over Trump's 45.6%, and has led since the first poll was released back in early July. That said, this would be an underperformance for the VP relative to her boss's performance in 2020 when he defeated Trump by 10 points, carrying Virginia by the largest Democratic margin since FDR back in 1944. Nevertheless, Virginia goes in the lean blue column here based on that nearly 6-point advantage for Harris. Next is Georgia, where 16 electoral votes are at stake. This was the closest state in the 2020 cycle, as Biden narrowly edged out Trump by 0.2%. Marking the first Democratic win here since Bill Clinton back in 1992. Notably, Clinton failed to win Georgia a second time when he ran for re-election in '96. Now, in 2024, the polls show Trump with a narrow lead of less than a percentage point, 0.7% to be exact, based on 39 polls in Georgia. He's garnering 48.3% on average over Harris's 47.6%. This is very much within the margin of error, and the average has been flipping back and forth over the last month or so. Trump has led in 4 of the last 6 surveys released here. So going back to our map, Georgia will be placed in the tilt Republican category. So Harris and Trump split the first 2 states at the 7 p.m. poll closing, lifting Harris's electoral tally to 221 over Trump's 148. 10 states to go now. Let's fast forward to 7:30 p.m. on election night as the polls close in Ohio and North Carolina. Before we dig into them, just a quick reminder. Less than 20% of you are subscribed, so take a second to click that red button below. It's completely free and helps me out a ton. Thanks a lot. Ohio is no longer considered in play for the Democratic Party after Trump carried it by 8-point margins in both the 2020 and 2016 election cycles. It had previously voted for Obama twice and was considered a key bellwether at that time. Now, the 2024 polls suggest Trump should hold Ohio by a similar margin as in his 2 previous elections. He leads Harris by 7.5 points right now, based on the 9 polls released in Ohio. He's averaging 52.3% to Harris's 44.8%. Looking at the timeline graph, we don't see much movement, as almost every poll has shown the former president leading by at least 7 points, sometimes even by double digits. So, back on our map, Ohio goes in the likely Republican column, aligning with Iowa as its electoral counterpart in the Midwest. Down in North Carolina, the Tar Heel state added an electoral vote following the 2020 census, bringing its total to 16. The latest Decision Desk HQ polling average shows a tight race, with Trump leading by a mere 0.8%. Based on 42 polls, Trump currently averages 49.1% to Harris's 48.3%. The race in North Carolina has been incredibly close since it became clear that Harris would take over as the Democratic nominee in late July. She even held a lead through much of August before Trump regained a slight edge, consistently leading by about a point. Since September began, Trump has maintained a lead in North Carolina, where he carried the state by 1.3% in 2020, marking his narrowest victory that cycle. Although this margin was slimmer than his 3.7% win in 2016, the national popular vote moved leftward by roughly 2.5 points between the 2 elections, so North Carolina retained a similar Republican lean compared to the national trend. The latest betting odds from BetOnline reflect confidence in the Republican position as well, with the odds at negative 165, implying about a 60 to 65% chance of a Republican victory. Alright, back to our map. North Carolina joins Georgia in the tilt Republican column. Those 2 wins lift Trump's electoral vote total to 181, leaving him just 40 votes shy of Harris in the race to 270. Let's jump to 8 p.m. on election night. The polls will close in New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Starting up in New Hampshire, a generally blue-leaning state that voted for Joe Biden by 7 points in 2020, we've seen just 3 surveys between Harris and Trump for the 2024 cycle. These polls average out to a 4.9% lead for Vice President Harris, with her polling at 52% compared to Trump's 47.1%. Therefore, on our electoral map, New Hampshire, with its 4 electoral votes, is leaning toward Harris. Now we turn to Pennsylvania, arguably the most critical battleground in this election cycle. It's widely regarded as the likely tipping point state, according to numerous public data-driven forecasts. Nate Silver assigns it a 32% chance of tipping the election, with both Harris and Trump seeing their odds of winning the election jump to better than 90% if they secure Pennsylvania. The polling average here shows Harris with a slim lead of 0.8% based on 63 polls, more than any other state, underscoring its pivotal role. Harris averages 48.9%, while Trump trails slightly at 48.1%. Since late July, neither candidate has managed a lead greater than 2 points, and the overall average remains within the margin of error. A standard polling error could easily swing the state in Trump's favor. Notably, Trump has led in 3 of the last 5 polls, potentially indicating a shift in momentum as we move closer to Election Day. For now, however, Pennsylvania will tilt in the Democrats' favor, adding 19 crucial electoral votes to Harris's tally. Finally, we have the Sunshine State, Florida, with 30 electoral votes, the 3rd largest prize on the map behind only Texas and California. Florida, once synonymous with the term swing state, is now considered strongly Republican-leaning after Trump improved on his 2016 performance by carrying the state by 3.5 points in 2020. It was one of only 5 states in the entire country where Trump did better in 2020 than in 2016. Republicans then followed up in the midterms in 2022, with Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio both winning re-election in landslides by 19% and 16%, respectively. However, the polls have tightened quite a bit over the last week or two. Trump had been leading by 4 to 5 points throughout August and into early September, but he now only leads Harris by 2.4%, based on 14 polls. He's averaging 49.2% compared to Harris's 46.8%. Neither candidate is above 50%, so there are clearly quite a few undecided voters here as well. Nevertheless, back on the map, Florida is placed in the lean Republican column. Just for reference, in our classification system, margins below half a point are considered a toss-up. 0.5% to 2% is tilt, 2% to 7% is lean, 7% to 187% is likely, 10% is likely, and more than 10% is safe. Harris maintains her electoral vote lead with 244, while Trump sits at 211, leaving 83 electoral votes up for grabs across the remaining battleground states, plus Nebraska's 2nd district. Most of these will see polls close at our next update at 9 p.m. Eastern. Let's begin with Michigan, generally seen as the most fundamentally blue of the Upper Rust Belt's core trio: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Michigan has trended left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin in recent cycles. While Trump narrowly carried Michigan by only 0.2% in 2016, his margins in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania were roughly 0.7% each. Biden successfully flipped these states back into the Democratic column in 2020, winning Michigan by nearly 3 points and Pennsylvania by 1.2%, and Wisconsin by just 0.6%. Now, in 2024, the polls indicate Harris leading Trump by a slim margin of 0.22% based on 42 polls, 48.3% to 48.1%. This is the narrowest margin in Michigan since July, as Harris previously led by at least 1 or 2 points. I believe Michigan is a key must-hold state for Harris. Without it, her path to reaching 270 electoral votes looks incredibly challenging. For now, though, it remains firmly in the toss-up category. Turning our focus to Wisconsin, this state is often viewed as the most Republican-friendly among the Upper Rust Belt trio. This is both fundamentally and demographically, as its population is predominantly white, more religious, and has a lower percentage of college-educated voters compared to its neighbors. However, against Biden and now Harris, Trump has consistently polled the worst in Wisconsin among the 3 states. Currently, Harris leads by a slight margin of 1.3% based on 47 polls. Again, Harris has led here since she became the nominee, currently averaging 49.4% to Trump's 48.1%. That said, whenever we talk about polls in Wisconsin, we must remember that Trump was underestimated by extraordinary margins in 2016 and 2020. Hillary Clinton led by almost 6 points going into election night and lost by 0.8%, while Biden led by more than 8 points and only held on by 0.6%. But given that we're basing our categorization on the latest polling average for this video, Wisconsin will be placed in the tilt blue column for Harris, bringing her total up to 254 electoral votes. We now turn our attention to the Southwest, beginning with Texas, the electoral heavyweight with 40 votes. Democrats might have reached their peak in 2020 when Trump's margin of 5.5 points marked the most competitive result in decades. However, with Republicans making gains among Hispanic voters, it's hard to imagine Harris will narrow that gap further this November. Currently, Trump leads Harris by a margin very similar to 2020 at 5.7%, based on 13 polls. He's polling at 51.6% to Harris's 45.9%, and he has consistently held a clear lead outside the margin of error in nearly every poll. Thus, on our electoral map, Texas is marked as leaning Republican, propelling Trump up to 251 electoral votes, just 3 shy of the VP. Let's move on to Arizona. In 2020, Democrats clinched a victory here for the first time since 1996, with Joe Biden's win by a margin of just 0.3%, making it the second closest state in that election right after Georgia. Now, in 2024, Trump has maintained a lead throughout most of the cycle. Currently, his lead mirrors those in Georgia and North Carolina, standing at 0.8%, based on 39 polls. Trump's average here is 48.7%, with Harris trailing at 47.9%. The polling aligns closely with the betting markets. Over at BetOnline, the Republicans are favored at minus 215 in Arizona, suggesting a strong 65% to 70% chance of winning. These odds are identical to those for Georgia, which also stands at minus 215. Consequently, on our electoral map, Arizona is also categorized in the tilt Trump column. That brings us to Nevada, with its 6 electoral votes. Nevada may not carry the same weight as the other battlegrounds, but the contest here is just as tight. The latest average from Decision Desk HQ gives Harris her largest lead of these 7 core battlegrounds at 1.9%, based on 27 polls. She's averaging 49.1% to Trump's 47.2%. For a while, it seemed Nevada was leaning Republican this cycle, with Trump initially showing strong polling against Biden, coupled with several positive indicators for Republicans over recent cycles. In the 2020 election, Nevada chose Joe Biden by a margin of 2.4 percentage points, the same margin it gave Hillary Clinton in 2016, even as the nation overall shifted leftward. The 2022 midterms saw the Republicans flip the governor's office, nearly unseat a reasonably popular Democratic senator, and outpoll Democrats in U.S. House votes for the first time in decades. These factors position Trump better than any recent Republican presidential candidate to potentially flip Nevada. Yet despite these advantages, he's still just within striking distance as the state currently tilts toward Harris. So, based on the latest polling averages from key battleground states, Trump is projected to secure 262 electoral votes, while Kamala Harris is projected to get 260, with 15 votes in Michigan still up for grabs, as neither candidate currently has a polling advantage greater than half a percentage point there. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments on this map and the state of the race. That does it for today's video, though. Shout out to my channel members in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. EP out. In November will apparently be very exciting. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next video.